I'm like, hey, your husband just got home. Give me your baby. Let him take a night and you take a night and just breathe. We struggle with as a military. And that's why I think mental health has become such a big thing, because these poor guys go over there and they come back, and reintegrating in is such a hard thing for so many people.
Kristin, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Can't complain. We're almost at the 4th of July at time of recording. This will go out later, people listening. But we were just talking before, and we've got loads to talk about. So I just want to jump into it. Do you want to do a quick intro, kind of who you are and what you do and what we'll be talking about today? And then we'll just go right into the story.
Okay. My name's Kristin. I am from Baltimore, Maryland, and currently living in Virginia Beach. And my husband just retired from the military a couple years ago. So we are navigating the life outside of the military and with two kids that are getting ready to go to college. So,
Very nice. Very
yeah.
nice. So the question, and by the way, when I found this question out, I told him, I was like, this is a doozy for you. He said, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, that's easy. That's a brontosaurus. My husband is obsessed. When he was a kid, he was obsessed with dinosaurs. So then he made my son obsessed with dinosaurs. And now all the kids we watch and help are all obsessed with dinosaurs. So we have a lot
Amazing.
of the dinosaur thing going on here, especially since they do like the exhibits down in the city. Yeah.
Amazing. This is why I do this tradition, because I was like, this is either
That's
going to go
a good one.
horribly, this is either going
That's
to
a
go
good
really
one.
bad or really well. And it went really well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, context for those listening. Kristen, your husband was a Navy SEAL. And so you guys are running a foundation now, and that's kind of how we got in touch. Shout out Rich Photography, or Rich Images. But I wanted to touch base on, because we see a lot of kind of special ops and military guys telling their story on various podcasts and things. And one of the things that often is not brought up is the spouse side, right? You hear stories of the guys and they're like, yeah, we're deployed here and this mortar hit like too close to our thing and I lost these people close to me. And then nobody talk, like, you don't hear, at least I don't, right? So maybe other people do, but at least I don't really hear the stories of like, yeah, my husband's going to be gone for a year or 6 months or however long, and now I just have to hope that something bad doesn't happen. And not only that, but deal with the integration or reintegration when they leave and come back and how all that works and the stuff that they've seen and that they can't talk to you about or won't talk to you about or don't want to talk about and kids and moving around and all the things that goes with that. But I want to do it through the lens of like your life didn't start when you married this guy, and so um, I was just super interested to talk. And we were already talking a little bit about how the story started. So if you want to like kind of give a maybe quick overview of that, and then we can jump into like maybe. I don't know where we left off a little bit, but just a quick overview of what we were talking about before, and then we'll kind of hop into the rest of it.
Okay. So my husband and I met in Maryland. We're both from Maryland. So we went to school I went to an all-girl private school. He went to the all-boy private school, and we never really crossed paths in high school. And then when we got to college, we both ended up at a party. And when we were at the party, he was like, "Oh, I'm leaving for the Navy. 9/11 happened. I gotta go." And so that started our journey of him like going off into the military. That point, he did not know anything about SEALs or anything. It was just, it's my turn to serve. And very quickly, it was like, oh, okay, that's kind of what he was born to do. And there's some people that are born to do it. There's other people that force themselves or don't have a path. He was definitely one that if you know him, you know he wanted to do that job. And he makes sure still to this day, it's all about making sure they have and anything he can give, he tries to give. So that was the reason we started the whole not started the foundation. Let's correct that. I only run the forward operating base here in Virginia Beach. The foundation is run all over, but we just try to network the people that are in this area as they get out of the military. And that is part of the reason, like when we were in and he was active duty, it was definitely one of those times where we were like, okay, we don't want this to end. We want to make sure these guys still have everything they need as they continue out of the military. And I think that was really important for him to have that goal, as he transitioned out as well. Not just me, but him as well, because it gave him a path. And so here we are now, 20 years later out of the SEALs and, trying to figure out and navigate life on our own with two kids. But also trying to help other people just connect with people outside the military. I think it's really hard for these guys to find that connection when they are used to that brotherhood, in the teams.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Um, okay, so he enlist or
Mhm.
OCS
No,
enlist,
he enlisted.
and so you are going to nursing school. And
Mhm.
at what point, like, where is your head at? Because I think you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I would be guessing that some of your friends are like, you haven't been together that long. Like
Totally.
he's going over here, long distance is not going to work, stability, et cetera, et cetera. Like,
Not
so
just
what is
friends.
going through your head in these situations? Like, in terms of, yes, we're going to make this work. Are you prepared? Do you know what you're getting yourself into? Like, how's like in okay, just go then.
No, we are 20, what, 21, 22,
Hmm.
just having a good time and enjoying life. We kind of call it our blackout time in some ways because you're just like, hey, do you want to have a good time? Yeah, we do. Let's go, and
Yeah.
that was the fun part of like, we're not going to make this super serious. Let's just see where it goes. And then when he was like, oh, I'm moving, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then he's like, but I'm going to come visit you all the time. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's like you're trying to figure out how that's all going to work. And it's not just friends that were like, what are you doing? It was the families on both sides that were like, you guys are you guys are rushing this a little fast. But we waited a little bit to get married. And it's actually a cute story. We were, he was going through training and he's like, hey, I think I want to become a Navy SEAL. And I was like, okay, why? Because I didn't know what that was. And he had just learned about it as he was already 2 or 3 years in.
Hmm.
So he was like, I want to do this. And I was like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go do this. I said, well, good luck. Can't help you. Like I don't know if it's good or bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he's like, hey, if I make it, we might be moving to California. I'm like, we're not moving to California. We're staying right where we are. And then he calls me a couple weeks later. He's like, hey, so we're moving to California. And I was like, oh, okay. I've got to talk to my job and I got to talk to my parents and,
Hmm.
whatever. So driving cross country, he had asked my dad if he could propose. And my dad said, whatever you do, do not get married in Vegas because you're going to drive through Vegas and I know you and you're going to get married in Vegas. And he's like, okay, I promise. So we got all the way to Vegas and then he proposed in Vegas and he's like, your dad said we can't get married. So we've got it. We can't get married here. I'm so sorry. So it was one of those like cutesy things that we
Yeah.
just drove cross country and that's where the whole Navy SEAL stuff started.
So this is what, like 2003, 4 at this
4.
point.
Yep.
So like for me, I'm 29, like I was in kindergarten when 9/11 like what's the mood? Like a lot of people that listen to this are around my age. So
Okay.
like what's the mood in the country? Like I remember like very brief things. Like my dad was working near DC. Remember mom being scared, but like that's kind of it. Like I was 5 or 6 or whatever. And like, so what's the mood in the country? Because like now, if you ask somebody about those wars, like there's very mixed. Like this, we shouldn't have been there. This wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
This was a good idea. And now it's kind of like not taboo to say that you don't think it was a good idea.
Yeah.
Um, but at the time, at least reading books and listening to people
Mhm.
talk about it, it seemed very like, no, this is the only option that we're going to like. What's the mood like in the country? Like, and how long did that last? Did it shift at a certain point? Like, like what was it like at that
It
point?
actually it was kind of crazy because it's funny that you asked this question. We have a lot of talks with younger kids about this stuff because we took our kids to like the grounds in New
Hmm.
York City for the Twin Towers and trying to explain to somebody what it felt like was a movie. Like you're sitting there, I'm studying for an exam, and you see this happen on TV, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, for the first tower.
Hmm.
And you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, before it hits anything else. And then everybody is just stunned. Like you're just all thinking, what just happened? Like, is this really happening? Is this really a thing? And when you're listening to the broadcast, and you're listening to people on the news, you're like, is this going to stop? Or what's happening next? Well, I was in school at that time, and he was at college at that time, and he was like, it everything changed. He came home that weekend, and he was like, I've got to go. It's time for me to go. Where I was like, what do we need to do as a country, to, move this forward? But people in the area, everybody was in how can we help mode. It actually was a very interesting thing, because we were both in college. So, watching young people be like, who was affected, who needs help, who needs to get where. But I don't know if you know this, but being in this life, you have a lot of, everybody wants to service, everybody wants to help, everybody wants to give. So that's what we were around. And especially in college, the colleges alone, the young people trying to like be together and try to figure out how they can help and send things to people and whatever. It was very powerful, sad, and powerful. Like you saw prayer in every culture, trying to figure out how to make it help one another. And that, I think, was, you can't explain it. You just can't explain it to someone that, even my kids, like going through the museum and watching it, it's a movie to them. Like they have no idea what actually this was for our friends who, lived through it. And watching like the communities take effect and stand around the people that needed it in just completely different areas. You wouldn't even know, Kim's dad was part of this or in the Twin Tower, whatever, and they just automatically just surround them. So it was a pretty crazy experience, but watching our country come together to figure out what was going to happen and how to like lift each other up was really cool. So you got to see that.
Did it turn to anger ever?
Oh, oh yeah.
Because it feels like doing, like I've done probably more than my fair share of reading into like that time and the
Yeah.
and like, well, for somebody who doesn't study it for like a living or whatever. But it seems like to me that a lot of the country just went into like a collective, I don't know what it like seeing red almost, and they're like, we're just going over there and we're gonna get whoever. Because there was some like, and I don't know how to ask this properly, so I'm just gonna ask it and
Do
then
it.
hope it. So it feels like we're worse off as a country now. Like after we took out our collective anger on whatever ha like whoever it was over there, like it doesn't feel like we're better now as a country than we were pre 9/11. And like that for me doesn't feel like growing up, like I'll say like shortly after, it doesn't leave me with a good like taste in my mouth. Now it's like everybody's angry all the time about everything. And it's like, how did this happen? Like I hear people tell stories about, oh, the 90s were amazing and stuff. Like, I don't know, I was four, right? But like it doesn't, it's like what happened? And then you can point to 9/11, of course, right? Like not to like diminish that, but it's now 25 years later and it's feels like we're worse off in a lot of respects. And I think a lot of people my age are kind of confused by that because we hear stories of like the country felt very together and there was a big community aspect of things and it's like, okay, well then what? Like what happened? Like where did it go?
Yeah.
Because now it's not like that.
Yeah.
Um and it's like I almost feel like an outside observer to some extent because I didn't live through the first, I mean I did, but like I wasn't an adult. So I don't know. I guess what are your thoughts? I don't know if there's a question in there, but it's just like these are my thoughts and observations, and I've not had the chance to ask somebody who one was like living through it, but then also had I would say, a more serious stake in it than other people.
Well, what I can tell you is I think every generation felt differently towards that situation because where I was in my life in college, living my life separate, from my parents and my husband living his separate from his and being in college, what we experienced during that time, there was a lot of anger, but there was also a lot of people that came out to support. So, as much as there was the anger, they were supporting in any way they could. Not so much, I mean, people waited in line to join the military during
Hmm.
that time. But before that, we had other things that were going on in the world, So it's like those things, there's always going to be something, I believe. There's always going to be something that you can look at and be like, well, before that, we didn't have this, and before that, we didn't have this. I know my parents look at it and they're like, obviously that was something that was very tragic to all of us. But there was also like several things during Desert Storm that were also very tragic. So
Yeah.
there's other things, not saying, one is worse than the other. They're definitely, but there were things that tore families apart and took some of our friends and stuff like that. And I can look at 9/11 and think, you know, that was a tragic, tragic incident that happened. And yes, you being young, people are going to be able to say, well, yeah, the country hasn't been the same since. But how old are you? So have you seen that before that? Did you see the country before that? You really didn't. Like you didn't know what that was. The 90s were great, but there were other things going on in the 90s that people were fighting as well. It's just what you hear about as a civilian compared to what you hear about as a military.
Yeah.
That's,
Well,
I think, the big thing. So, and now what I do know is like after 9/11, so much was put on media compared to what was not put on media before. They have blasted so many things I've never thought we would hear on the news. And that sometimes scares me too, both ways. Like, no matter what you believe, no matter what you think is right or wrong, I feel like, the news puts things out that you're like, well, should we be hearing this yet? Or should we be like making sure that this is all everybody's good before we do those things? Because that always makes me nervous.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really a hard topic to touch on because when you do look at that stuff, trying to explain it to somebody like even now my kids' age, is like, well, they're not going to know what the country looked like then, or they're never going to understand what that went through and why that even happened. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough topic to touch on.
Yeah. They never didn't have to deal with TSA.
Yeah.
But okay, so he enlists and he's in big Navy and then he decides he wants to do Navy SEAL. For you, like when I hear that and I'm like, that must have sparked some kind of reaction. You like, are you sure that you want to go do that?
Yeah.
Because that seems much more like Bill Burr has a bit about this where um somebody like a crowd got mad at him because he was making fun of the Navy, and he was like, "All I was saying was like the guy that tells the plane to take off isn't as much of a hero as the guy that flies the plane." And it's like, aha, right? But like,
Yeah.
there's a certain truth to that in terms of, and we talked about a similar situation on the phone. But it's like he's going from big Navy into like now it's like no, this is the situation where it's like you are the most in harm's way generally speaking, right? But of all the things that he could be doing, that's like the most one of the most dangerous ones.
Yeah,
Did
it is.
like what how long did it take? Well, one, because you were like, well, I didn't know what it was. But like when you realized, were you like, hey man, what are you doing? Or was it
Well,
too late?
so I
Like
don't know
how did
if
that?
you watched, there's like a whole video series on like Navy SEALs,
Hmm.
right? There's this whole video series on Navy SEALs. And my husband's like, oh, why don't you watch this while I'm in training? And I was like, okay, why? And he goes, well, then you'll have an idea of what I'm doing. I'm like, do I want to know what you're doing? Like, is this? And he's like, that's just the training part. Like, it's good for you to have an idea. And I was like, okay. So I start watching it and I'm like, why is he doing this? This is not okay. Like, is he going to make it? What is happening? But then at the same time, as you get to know me, you'll realize like this is a young man's game. So I think when you're young and you're like, well, let's try it. Okay, let's try it. There are so many things that you're like, well, how about we just see how this goes? And that's kind of where we went. We knew we wanted to be together and it wasn't going to change no matter what his job was. So I thought he was sexy when he was on a flight and he was on a, aircraft carrier doing the wand thing. And then it's like, okay, now you're going to get sexier and in better cameras. Okay, like let's just do it. So that's kind of the world we started with. And I'm big on like open mind of this is a new journey, let's try it. And he was definitely one that was going to try all the journeys, Eric. He was going to
Yeah.
do them all. So
Yeah.
it was good. I really enjoy, he is a great energy. You know how when you meet your spouse, you're like, this is perfect. We complement each other well. There's
Hmm.
good. And you know when he needs the calm, and I know when he needs, like, it's back and forth. And that was one of those times where I was like, go do it. See if this makes you what fulfilled. And when he came back, he's like, hey, I made it. And I'm like, shit. All right, here we go. So then it was like, oh, right. Okay, I'm supportive. I'm supportive. Let's go. Let's go. And so, but I was always big on like, let's move, let's try something. And I think if you are in the spouse situation, in any relationship, but especially in this relationship, you have to be a little bit game to try, like to go with it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to struggle.
Well,
So,
that's what as you're giving the answer, I'm like, you sound like the perfect person to be
I
with
mean, I
somebody
think I
who's,
am. No,
yeah,
I'm
I
just
mean, you're killing it. You're killing it. I don't know. Um, okay, so he gets through training. Now war's kind of at its peak at this point, oh 05, oh 06, especially Iraq, Fallujah and Ramadi and all these things are happening around this time. Um, and so he goes and deploys, and the first time, how are
yes.
you processing these things?
So I think the best way to put it, well, at that point we had two kids at that point. We didn't waste time when we got married. Like we took time to get married and then we
Uh-huh.
didn't waste time. So we had moved across country and we were living in a new place. And the good part for me was when he did deploy, I came home. So I came home to my family in Maryland and I stayed with them and had support, which I believe is like the blessing that held me together because I had people. I had the network and everybody's like, hey, we're gonna be here and help you through this part. So he didn't worry. And that was the big thing is I didn't want him to be like, she's by herself, she's got two kids. How is she gonna do this? Even though I'm pretty confident I could have done it, he knew he wanted me to have that help and just the support.
That's, I mean, again, like a really, really cool answer because not only the amount of selflessness that, or like the consideration that you have to say, hey, I don't want him to be worried about me when he's with his group over there. And so I'm like, we're gonna make sure that the support's there so he can perform. And it's like, that's a really I don't know. I'm honestly a bit speechless at this answer because not because it's like something that's so like I don't know if profound is it's not rocket science,
No,
but like to hear you conceptualize that was that a conscious thought at the time or were you
it
just
was.
kind of that's I mean,
That was always my thought was he needs to be able to concentrate on doing his job correctly. And he's not going to be able to do that if he's worried about me.
but then there's a byproduct of that, which is if you know that he's not worried about you and performing at his best, then the risk for him is less as well.
Well, I think that's how you look at it, but I think his risk is higher because he's now in a place where he is going to give everything he's got, but
Mm,
he also knows he needs to get home.
yeah,
So, like, he's going to give it everything because he wants to come back. And he
yeah.
knows we're waiting. Because that was the thing, Eric, is every time he would deploy, every time he went on a trip, because you can't even just look at deployments as big things. Their trips are very risky. All their
Hmm.
training is very risky. So, and we've had several friends not make it through both. So you're in that position of like, no matter when they leave the house for whatever situation, I am always the big believer of, I've got it. You go take care of what you got. We'll be here waiting for you. So, and he always knew that. That was never something he had to worry about. He could go do his job knowing, like, I've got the house, I've got the kids. You go do what you need to do, and we'll be here. And
Mm.
he always made sure that, you know, he called when he could or write when he could, email, whatever he could do. But the funny part is like my kids don't even know the difference. So, you know, here they're college and high school age, and they have just started to figure out like a little bit of the details of him being gone. So they're like, oh, well, he was on a trip. They don't know that he was on a trip, you know, parachuting or whatever,
Well,
because
they might now.
yeah, they know a little bit. They know a little bit.
Yeah.
They're good now. They're good now.
Yeah.
But it's like those kinds of things that it's like, oh, shoot. Well, we really didn't go into too much detail because we didn't want anybody to sit there and worry about those things right then. You know, he wanted to go and feel confident and not worry about, like, you know, my kid's got a fever right now. So I'm going to have to, oh, shoot, is Kristin going to be able to take care of it? Or do I need to come home? And I'm always, that's me. This is my personal way of doing things on, hey, I've got the house, I've got the kids. You go do your job and we'll be here when you come back. And he always, you know, made sure to appreciate that part of it big time.
Mm.
So he was very good on that part too.
I've got kind of three more like topics with this, and I figure that they're all intertwined. So they're all a bit kind of heavy, but I want to just throw them all three at you, and then you tell it how you want to tell it. Um, when somebody comes back from a deployment like that, I'd imagine they've seen some stuff that they don't want to share. They're
Yeah.
changed as a person, right? You like even just civilians in their own relationships, like I'm a different person than when we got married 3 years ago, and I'm a different person, and that was a different person from when we started dating 4 years ago, right? Um, but you go on deployment for however long, you see some stuff that you really didn't want to see, um, some horrible things, right? And so the second kind of piece of that is you might also see somebody die that you're close to. Um, and so like so the two pieces kind of in that, which is like one, when they come back or when he comes back for in your case in particular, how it sounds like you were already open-minded enough to kind of understand that this was a possibility and there's going to be some stuff that like you don't know and that's okay. But like how the reintegration back as they're kind of like a not a new person but like and then if the unfortunate thing happened and somebody passed, like dealing with that within the teams because I've heard like different guys go on shows and say like that everybody like this guy destroyed the team because these two were gone and we never should have or like whatever the reason is and people start to blame other people and do all these things and so you weren't there, you don't know, but like you can only be there so much because like you know what I mean? So like and then the third thing is like due to all these things, I think I don't know what the statistic is, but like the divorce rate in the special operations community is pretty high. Um, when like so dealing with all of those things, right? Somebody comes home, they're changed, you're his friend, the wife doesn't want to because of all these like how dealing with all those things kind of they're all interrelated. I just I don't know. I guess yeah, those three things. I don't really know exactly what to ask, but
No, that's good. I mean, let me break it down for you just a little
sure.
bit. And then you tell me if I missed anything.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Okay. So being on the spouse side, the commands do give a good amount of support while the guys are gone. So they try to give babysitting hours, they try to give therapy, they try to give support groups. Um, and they do different things for the kids. So while the guys are gone, and when the guys are there, but when the guys are gone, I'm just going to speak on that first.
Sure.
They try really hard to make sure that the family is given the support when the guys are deployed. So when the guys do come home, let's talk first when they come home and nothing has happened that we know of. We haven't lost anybody. There hasn't been anything like that. It takes a good amount of time for the guys to one reacclimate to the time difference, to the food, to the noise levels, and to trying to integrate into the family. Like, where does he stand discipline wise for the kids? Where does he stand on bedtime? Or, those kinds of things. Those are very hard things to overcome. And it's almost like a power struggle in a way, because you want to love on them and you want them to love on your kids, but sometimes they're kind of in a zone and they can't come out of it. And so you have to give that time. That needs grace. Like, it needs time for that. The good part is they can go to work and they can tell someone like, hey, I need some time. The bad part is when they come home, their bandwidth is very thin and short, and they're like, the kid baby screaming, this one's hungry, whatever it is, it can take a little bit longer for them to integrate in. Sometimes wives feel like, hey, they should jump right back in, and that's just because they don't know. They don't understand, like, this does take time. When I was a new wife and in that situation, I was very lucky that I lived in a community where we had wives of all different ages and all different deployment cycles. So they were like, hey, it's going to take a minute, give him some time. Like, it's going to take a minute, which this is where I believe like the support of your team and the families comes into play, because that's where I thrive. I'm like, hey, your husband just got home. Give me your baby. Let him take a night, and you take a night, and just breathe. Like, just breathe, because he needs that reset time. And if you don't give these guys that reset time, it can be hard. It can be a really hard journey. Like, it can be a very hard journey. Okay. So that's my big thing. Like, you need to give them that time. So if you have something that happens where we lose a team guy, we lose somebody on deployment, doesn't have to be a team guy. It can be a support. It can be anybody that's with us. Or they have a lot of fighting that they have to do, or anything along those lines. That is one of those times, Eric, where it's like, you have to play off their personality when they come off the plane. Personally, I've had a little bit of both, or all of them. So, and you have to be ready to just regroup. So when we did lose friends, and we have been in those situations, I am big on like, hey, we need to rally, and us as the families need to come together and figure out who needs what, who needs the help with dinners, who needs the help with cleaning, who needs, all these things. Now, the command does take on a lot of that stuff, but the wives also need to know they're not alone, so your community is there to help you. And I can't speak on that enough. Like, I think in some ways women are always told like, you can do everything that they're doing, or you can do all of those things. Well, if you marry a guy in this situation, you need to learn to embrace yourself, embrace the community, and become one. Don't fight each other. Like, that's what I find is so many people are trying to fight for that power. And it's like, don't fight each other. You guys need to like group up and manhandle the situations. And that's one thing I can say for my group of friends, we've always on both coasts been really great at is, hey, this is the situation. This guy's having a hard time. We need to make sure this is taken care of for the wife and for the kids and everything else, because he just needs to be. And if that means he needs to sit in a room and he needs to sit with her, we're going to take the kids for the week and we're going to make sure they're taken care of. But it is a really hard transition. And it's not something that you can say, hey, in 30 days, they're going to be good. We don't know, in 30 days, we don't know what that looks like. And you can't put a number on that. And some guys are really good at compartmentalizing and saying like, hey, I'm home. that's there, I'm home now, and there's other guys where it's just like swirling around and they can't let it go, and it's really hard, but sometimes they don't have that safe place to show it, so it'll come out in random spots where you're like, oh shoot, maybe we need to like pull back a little bit, and you don't ever want to step on somebody's toes or be like, hey, what's wrong with you? You don't want to get into that situation. You just pull away and you just go, all right, it's time for us to, like everybody else needs to just let him be for a while. So, but that's one thing I can say as in the spouse world is a very hard thing to know, because you have to be intuitive. Like you have to look at him and be like, you good? I'm good. You good? And if he's like, I'm not good, and then he can tell you that, then you can figure out what you want to do with it. But sometimes guys just don't know what's happening. And that's when they're just spinning and spinning. And it's like, you got to try to read it as much as you can. And that's where we struggle with as a military. And that's why I think mental health has become such a big thing, because these poor guys go over there and they come back, and reintegrating in is such a hard thing for so many people. But I do have to say, I'm very, very blessed that my husband is one that he knew his job and he did the job, and he was able to come back and know, like, this is not his job, so this is family, this is house, this is, your kids and whatever else. But that doesn't happen for everybody. That's a very hard thing.
Did it get easier as time went on, or was each one its own set of challenges?
Yeah, I think certain things got easier. In a way, you become a little numb to things. So you just are like, oh, you're leaving. Okay, let's get these things done. Like, let's make sure our paperwork's in order. Let's make sure power of attorney's done, like those kinds of things. You just become routine with it. So it's funny. Well, not funny, but you talk to people now and they're like, you have all that done? And I'm like, well, yeah, we would, why wouldn't we have all that done? Oh, we don't have any of that done. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and they're, civilians. So they don't think that that's outside the box for them. But for us, that was our norm. You had to
Hmm.
do that every year. You were making sure all of, your stuff was put together. So I do think that stuff became very routine and you became numb to it. The things that got harder were more of, our kids started to figure out he was leaving. So that's when, they would see me cry, or they would see dad upset, and they would see his bags come out. Now, of course, they're older and they don't remember those times, but I mean, they remember bits and pieces, but not like big time stuff. Where for a mom and a dad, going through that was much harder. So, watching him come back from, go away and not know when he was coming back, those were the hard things, like the not knowing where he was going and when he was coming back. I think that was the hardest part.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you ever worry about your kids and their relationship with him, in terms of like not getting to know him as much as you'd want, or like not getting that side of like the masculine side of the parenting or anything like that? Or did he come home and he was superhero to them and it like kind of worked itself out?
So it's funny because my husband has this saying when we talk about parenting with people, because I've been a doula for several friends when they have their babies and stuff. And
Hmm.
people are always worried, like, he's not home. He didn't get to do this. He's not here for this or whatever. And my husband was always big on saying, hey, it's quality over quantity. And he's like, don't look at it as a number. You don't look at this as a time. When you are here, you're present. You
Hmm.
are present. You make that your main thing. And I think young couples listening to that was such a big thing, because watching marriages now, it's such a 50-50. Everybody is very much like, hey, you do this and I'll do that, and you do this and I'll do that. Well, when you're in this world, there's none of that until he comes home and he's good. You don't get that. So, I mean, he might mow the lawn like a beast, but he doesn't know what he's going to do with his kid inside. so,
Yeah.
so it's like those kind of things, like you're trying to figure it out. But he is very much that person to anyone's kid, Eric, because we live in this community. If I felt that my kid needed masculinity or to roll on the dirt and roll on the ground and fight with my son or whatever, I would call anybody and they'd be like, we're on our way. So not one of the guys would be like, yeah, I don't have time for that tonight. Every one of them would come and they would just jump on it and not even think twice. I want you to take him to baseball. Okay. So there were times where we were talking about it the other day when we lived in California. He was gone majority of the time. And one of the other dads was home because he was hurt. So because he
Mm,
was home, he became the baseball coach. He became the soccer coach. And sometimes didn't even have a kid on that team, but he made sure there was a dad that was part of that. And I think that's what we have here in Virginia Beach. There's a lot of dads that travel, but the ones that are home know that that is important.
mm,
So, that they definitely step up in that way and much appreciated. Like it's definitely a good thing. And I'm not saying just Navy SEALs, that's across the military.
yeah.
Most people have that person or that friend or that dad that's like, I got it. I'll take over, or that mom even that's like, I'll take over. So, but I think to answer your question, I don't think they missed out on too much that way because when he was home, he was driving me nuts. He was home, breaking couches, wrestling, and, fighting the dog and the kids laughing. Like, it's just like, what else are we going to do? so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, yeah.
No, that's good. I think at least in civilian world, the kind of community aspect has been lost a little bit. Like I don't I've not met a lot of neighbors in any of the places that I've lived. And it's not even for lack of trying. It just feels like you're intrude. Like if you try, it feels like you're intruding. Like why are you knocking on my door to say, "Hey, moved in, nice to meet you." It's like so it doesn't feel, I don't know. It feels somehow,
Disconnected.
yeah, somehow we as like society have gotta kind of sort that piece out, I think, a little bit generally, not to go down a completely different rabbit hole. Um, so in terms of, okay, so that's like, is there anything else that you want to touch on that piece before we go to the foundation?
I'm trying to think. So I think the main thing for people to know during that time is like, be patient. You can't make somebody change after they've been living in a different country, fighting wars. And remember, they're being told to do these jobs. So you have to give them grace when they come home. They have to be knowing like this is a safe place. And I think that's the hardest thing is like these people work hard and they do a job that is not easy. And I think the spouses that are home, their job gets double hard when they've got the house and everything in the house, and now a husband that's not acclimating well. So you just have to give grace. That's my big
Yeah.
thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So at where did the decision come from that he was gonna ready to retire? Was that you and him together, or was that him being I'm done? Did he get injured? Were the kids a certain age that you're like, okay, they're going off to college now, we should like how like walk through that and then the now he's home all the time.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so like that's right now he's breaking couches all the time. So
No, so actually that's good. So we were in a position where he had got injured before and he came back. He rehabbed and he came back from the injuries. But I think all guys have injuries that they come back from or don't want to tell too much about because they want to continue to do their job. But he had an injury and he came back and he knew we had talked about it because my kids were high school age. And I said to him, I was like, if you're going to do it, let's finish high school. and get them through. And then you can decide what your path looks like during that time. And he was on for it. He was like, you've done your time. I feel like we can do this. So, and remember, he was in a point in the military where there was a lot of war.
Hmm.
So, there was just a lot of things spinning the whole time he was in. So when he did decide to make that transition out, it was not easy for him to make that transition, but
When is it, like 21, 22?
yeah,
So
22,
like the entire GWAT basically. Well,
everything.
not that it stopped now, but
Yeah,
anyways.
but like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was like kind of, there was a lot going on then. And so when he decided, he said to me, he's like, hey, we're hitting that 20-year mark. What are your thoughts? And I was like, hey, I would really like to see what life looks like on the other side if you're willing to, navigate that with me. And he was good about it. And he was like, all right, let's go, let's do this. And I was like, am I ready for this? I knew now he was ready for it, but I'm
Ooh,
like,
talk to that. Talk to that
yeah,
feeling. Are you ready for it?
because you have to remember for 20 years, I have been in a position where I've been running the house. The kids and I are like a trio, and we've been on a unit and we just kind of do. When he's home, of course, he's part of it. But when he's not, we still move forward, you know? So when you're in the position where you're like, oh no, what does this look like for us as a unit with him moving forward? Not bad, just change, you know? And then it's not only that part, it's the paperwork side of getting out of the military. So now you're looking at like disability and retirement and making sure, everything is status quo because we've got kids going to college, so we've got to make sure this is all done. So in that position, I was like, I don't I don't know how this is going to look. We both of us didn't know how this was going to look. So in the military, they give you like a little bit of time as you're phasing out, to start looking for another job. And they give you a couple months to like look at these other jobs, and then you've got, your paid time off and stuff like that. So we took that time to kind of try a couple things and see, what does it look like if he goes to an office every day? What does it look like if he's home all day, every day, all day? So it was one of those where you're like, what is going to work for us? So we tried them all, and we tried the one where he was home all day, and that was not a winner. So we learned from experience that was not a good win for us. Not, we both were just like snarling at each other, like you'd hiss at each other as you walked by. And we were like, maybe this is not a good thing for us. And so we pulled back from that, and we decided he found some other options, and one stuck, and it's been amazing. And it's great because it's local. So he still has some travel, but he doesn't have enough to be like gone all the time. He has like a travel time
Hmm.
during the year. And then otherwise he's home, which my kids have never had him home this much. I've never had him home this much. So having him here has been great. Like he did college orientation, and he goes to tournaments, and he does all those things where I'm like, or can you handle this? And he's like, yeah, I got it. And I'm
It's
like,
like
are you
it's like,
sure?
yeah, I can drive a car and watch a
Yeah,
soccer game. Like that's fine.
that's exactly it. And then of course I'm texting him the whole time. I'm like, what's the score? How are they doing? And he's like, just breathe, just breathe. And I'm like, okay, okay, I got it, I got it. So then I text my friends, because then I can't text him. So I have to text somebody to make sure, I know what's going on. But he is loving it, Eric. Like, I think that is the part, the connection he has now that I get to see as a mom is worth the time that he was away. So it was worth it, because this age, this teenage weirdness that we're going through right now is just a time where they need their dad. And they always have the love from me, but having like his spin on things is nice. Like, I'm like, oh, somebody was mean to you. Oh my God, I'll take care of it. And he's like, all right, let's take a step back for a second. I'm like, where is she? No. And then he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, breathe. And I'm like, all right, all right. So now is the time where I think he probably feels like he's in a war zone sometimes with me, because I'm like, I just can't come down sometimes because I know he's here, so he'll bring me down. So it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where's the foundation come into play for you? Because I can imagine
Okay.
maybe part of your brain is like, all right, he's out. It's been 20 years. Thanks,
Yeah.
but then the other part, as you mentioned before, is like everybody who does goes into that, spouses or otherwise, is very service oriented. And so I imagine the majority of your brain is like, now it's time to give back and help the people that are also getting out. So I'd imagine, is that what the thought process is generally?
Well, the whole he's out, peace out
Yeah.
was actually never the thought. It was the oh shit, we're out. So now we have to
Ah,
figure out how this works. So,
yeah,
and as much as we both wanted it's like I said before, it's a young man's game.
yeah.
So when you're young, you do things without thinking about it. You do a lot of this stuff without thinking about it, where I'm like, are you going to get off that rope? You're going to pull your shoulder out, like these kinds of things where before I would be like, get him. So, it started to get to that point where I was like, you've had two shoulder surgeries. Maybe we don't do that. So, and he's like, I got it. Okay, no, I don't got it. It's definitely not good. So I'm like, the game is up. The game is up. Let's let, the young guys come in and take it over. And he was able to be in a position where he could help train them. And that I think was great for him too, because my husband is a phenomenal teacher. He is great at teaching people things, and he's calm, like I said before, and he's a great person that way. So when we got into we're phasing out, um he got in contact with one of the foundations, which the commands help you with. They're like, hey, you're getting ready to get out. Why don't you look at these foundations? They'll help you with your paperwork. They'll help you with your health. They'll help you with, all these things. And the Seal Future Foundation was brought to him, and he was put into contact with some amazing people. And they helped him so much in so many different ways. So the foundation works in 4 pillars. So they work with helping with your career, helping with the community, making sure you still have that community outside of the military. With this, that's part of the reason we do it. The education side, like if you need a degree or if you need some kind of training for something. And then they help with the paperwork and all of that jazz too. So when they do all of those things, it just helps the family move a little smoother. So I didn't feel like I was trying to navigate that by myself. Somebody else is helping him with a resume. Somebody else is helping him learn how to talk to people outside of the military. It's a very different world when you're used to saying, go do that. And then you get into this position, and they're like, they're not doing that. So they don't want to do that anymore. So I'm like, okay, well, but when they helped him navigate all of those avenues, I was like, well, shoot, we can help people. And he was like, I'm game. So I had talked to a girlfriend that worked at the foundation, and she said, would you be interested in helping lead in networking and stuff like that in Virginia Beach? And I said, absolutely. Anything we can do to help these guys know getting out is not an easy process. But you're not alone, and your family's not alone. And we will help. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to go to somebody that has some kind of knowledge beyond me, and they're going to find you that answer. And they have been a wealth of knowledge that way. So it's been great. It
How have
really
you
has.
have you enjoyed kind of running this chapter of it instead of just because I figure there's a lot of like other admin things that goes with it, and you've got to, I don't know, do certain, I don't know, I've never run a chapter of a foundation before, but if I can put my running a business hat on, there's a lot of stuff like that goes on that aren't just necessarily, yeah, I'm going to help this person with their resume. There's
Yes.
like other stuff that goes on. So I would, full-time job, I would close to it.
No, I wouldn't say full time, but I got to tell you, I like to be busy.
Yeah.
So I like to be constantly networking and helping someone. So if somebody calls, I'm like, hey, let me get this done for you. So basically, for me, it's big on the community side. And if you need the education side, I point you in that direction. If you need the health side, I point you in that direction. If you need, documents and resumes and stuff like that, I point you in that direction.
Mm,
And then and those people know, hey, you came from Kristin. oh, you came from Kristin, you know, and then we all kind of connect together. But I have a great community director at the foundation who, if I call her and I'm like, hey, I have a question, she'll be like, okay, you need to call this person. I have this person. But what I like to do is make sure everybody has a good time. So I make sure like the families can connect outside of the military. So if you're getting out of the military in 2 or 3 years, and you say to the foundation, hey, I'm looking to get my paperwork together, because you can start it earlier, they're going to put you in contact with the foundation and say, well, why don't you contact them and see when their next social is? So then we'll go to like, what is it called? iFly. And then all the kids will do the iFly with their dads. And then it's like, okay, well, we have a golf tournament. So we raise money at the golf tournament, and that money goes to whatever the foundation needs at that point. So, but people love it because or our unit tries really hard to include everyone. I'm big on like, you can do just the guy, which is awesome, because they deserve it, but the family needs it. So we need to do this as a unit. And the foundation has been so nice, because that is one thing I feel very passionate about, is like, you need to include the wives, you need to include the kids. And they've done all of it all over the place. But in Virginia Beach, it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, we're going to have a social and it's going to be at this restaurant. Bring your kids, bring your wives. Let's just enjoy a meal together and learn what's out there, what's next. So those are the big things for me.
Yeah. That community feel, I mean, even just on your Instagram, half the pictures are like team dinners at your house.
Oh, yeah, we
So
do a lot of
it shines through a lot. I think I don't even know. Like I remember thinking back to like my own playing, like when I was that age playing. It's like we didn't really have a lot of that. Um, I don't know why that was the case. I also didn't really bother to ask. But like the community, the more like the older I get and the more just for everything, the more it's like, hey, if I want to pursue this sort of thing, it's like I need a team of people, a community of people that are knowledgeable in this space and that I can trust. Because there's so many people, like you just go on Google and you're like, hey, I need a person that does this. Like there's no way to verify half the
that.
time. Like that trustworthiness piece, like even in the neighborhood, like we talked about earlier, it's like, who's your community here? Like even now, like if we go, like we've got a dog, and if we want to go travel somewhere, like even for a day, it's like the list of people that I have to be like, hey, can you let the dog out is not as long as I would like it to be. Um, and that's, I mean, obviously not great, but it's, I think more people could use that community building exercise,
Really.
and the people that kind of are able to turn it into not cheesy because there's so I think people are well, maybe me personally, but also people I talk to are kind of jaded by like, oh, let's do team bonding. And it's like always cringe and nobody wants to be there. And it's like, what are we doing here? Um, like playing icebreaker games. And then you have to like if you have to have somebody who is good at that. And that's very difficult, especially if you're not dealing with um like a community that wants to talk to people. Like a lot of people, like after COVID, they were locked inside. It's easy to stay inside now. You don't
Yes.
have to go anywhere. You can get your food from DoorDash. You don't even have to go to the grocery store. You can work remote. You don't even have to talk to anybody. And that's not, at least for me anyways, I would be very unhappy if I did all that all the time. Although at the same time, like I was talking to a sports psychologist just like on the show, and she was like, well, introverts, those are the people that are at conferences and they always disappear back to their hotel room for a bit. And I'm like, yes, I'm also that person, but like, I don't want to stay there for forever. I need to come out and talk to people. But just that trust factor, like, you have a like sense of like security almost. It's like, yeah, I trust this person, no problem. And like, you don't have to worry about if this person is gonna, like, if the plumbing guy is gonna come fleece you and he's gonna say, oh, I changed this part and it didn't really change, right? Like all these things that like people don't, I don't know. Like buying a home, you figure some of these things out. You're like, damn, there's 1,000 plumbers, and how do I pick one? And how do I?
You
There's
you have
all
to
these
talk to
things.
a friend who had the
Yeah, yeah. Well, exactly. But not a lot of my friends own homes. That's a different conversation for a different day. There's a different issue. But the community piece, like you mentioned, is super important. So I think it's super cool that you're doing it. And then from the soccer perspective as well, like all the time I see posts about like 757 All Stars and like all these things that you guys have got going on, and it's like the same like seven people all the time, which is super cool to see that what you guys got going on. But I don't know. I think have you thought about ways to transition that to like some of the more like civilian side as well?
Well,
Just because like there's a big loss for that, and the communities are just toast in a lot of situations.
yes, you are. That is so true. And I have, because as you can tell, the team dinners for soccer are something that we've always, as the girls side has always made a thing. The girls team in high school has always done team dinners. And so when my daughter was in freshman year, I was like, oh, I'm going to host. I'm going to start. I'm going to do it. And my husband's just shaking his head. He's more of an introvert, just so you know. And so he's like, here we go. And I'm like, they need to know this is supposed to be fun. So I believe like you become a unit if you're in situations where it's fun for everybody. Not cheesy, sometimes cheesy, but not like crazy cheesy, but it has to be something everybody's going to enjoy. So I really do try to bring that into the civilian side, especially with the kids, because I want them to carry it. I
Yeah.
want my daughter to look at it and be like, oh, I'll go to college and I'll say, hey guys, we're all going to Chipotle. Anybody want to come? And do it that way where slowly it'll start to become the norm, right? Well, because my kids are a year apart, I was like, it's time to shine. Like, this is the time for everybody to come together and become one. People thought I was out of my mind. Eric, like everybody in the high school was like, you're losing it. Do not put all these kids in one area, whatever. If we have them in school, that's enough, whatever. And so one of my gracious friends has an open concept house. And I was like, so can I host a team dinner here with both teams? And she's like, absolutely, let's do it. And so we took all the kids. So we had 80 kids at one point, all over the house, in the pool, whatever. And the amount of happiness and smiles and, people just enjoying, including coaches, like all just happy and seeing the kids play. Now, granted, did I add games that were cheesy and stupid for them to do? Of course I did, but they loved just being a kid. They didn't have to think. It was total, whatever. So as an adult, my mom was big on this stuff as a kid when I was a kid, because she was like, you have to learn to play. If you don't learn to play, it's hard for you to grow and it's hard for you to have fun. So these kids really kick butt in soccer. Like they play their butts off. They don't want to disappoint and they do everything they can. My son is a little harder, like to push to have the fun. He doesn't always want to like let it happen, but then as soon as he's there, he's fine because he's very focused and very
Yeah.
logistical and whatever. And then afterwards, he's always like, that was great. I had the best time. So I do think like every personality is different. I'm trying really hard I'm working on this thing where I'm going to try to bring all the foundations together against their will. No, I'm just kidding. Not against their will, but in a position where we all meet somewhere and we help everyone at once. So you can have like the Navy SEAL Foundation, the SEAL Future Foundation, the Mandana, all these foundations come together because ultimately we're there to just help each other, right? And if I'm not going to do it, this foundation's going to do it. But if we can all be together and show everybody, look, we're unified, we are one, and we're going to all do this, I think it's going to be amazing. And I know on the civilian side of that, they need to see that. Like they
Hmm.
need to see we're not fighting each other. There's no reason for that to be a fight. Like we can all do our things separately, but if we can do it and then show them like we can all come together, I think it's kind of cool. I
Yeah.
think that's a cool thing to show our future adults because they need to see how important that is.
Yeah. 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 I completely agree. I think given the time, and you said your house was supposed to get noisy 15 minutes ago, I feel like that,
No,
I
it's
feel like
totally
that,
fine. It's just my daughter. She walked in, she's greeting the
I
dog.
feel like, well, I do feel like just actually. So in terms of like if people are interested in helping out the foundation or going to find more,
Yes.
um, where should people go to look for that and how can they help?
They can go to the Seal Future Foundation website. And on that website, there is a uh, option to look at more information, to donate, to show you what we do. And it's got a list of all of the activities that we have coming up. So if you want to be a part of it, if you want to sponsor something, anything along those lines, every little bit helps. And all of these guys need support, and that all costs money. So
Hmm.
hiring these people to come and help us and to support these guys and these families just costs so much. So just to learn about it is great, because just for you to know that this is out there and it's helping people as they get out, because we have a lot of things that are a struggle for these guys.
Yeah, 100%. Um, any last nickels before we get you out of here?
I don't think so. I mean, you tell me. Anything
Is
soccer
there?
wise you want to touch on?
Oh yeah, we can do that. So, what's your thoughts on youth soccer in the US?
Well, so I don't know anything about the European side
Hmm.
of soccer. But we push our kids so much younger than I thought we would ever do, like for travel sports and stuff like that. I guess because my husband and I did it more in middle school and high school, where kids are starting in like elementary school and they're
Mm,
starting this process.
yeah.
But I do have to say, like my daughter's been through it. She's had some injuries over the years, and she has pushed through like a freaking champ, probably from her dad. I'm not gonna lie, it's not from me, but and my son definitely pushes the same way, just he hasn't had as many injuries going through it. But watching like girls versus boys, because I kind of get a little bit of both,
Yeah.
uh, it has definitely been interesting to watch. So very blessed to be a part of it, because I wanted to be on both sides. But girls is definitely a different animal than the boys side, for sure.
Yeah. How have you found for like in terms of the injuries, the like physical therapy side, return to sport? Like I don't know what her injuries were, but
Yeah.
I've at least for me personally, like there's a lot of I think the not the science, but like the way that well, two things. One, like I've got somebody that I know that was injured like quite seriously, like ACL.
Uh-huh.
And they were doing physical therapy, and then insurance was like, well, it's not medically necessary anymore. And then I was training him, and I was like, who told you that? Because you can't land right now, and I'm not gonna have you do like who told you that? Um, and so it's been interesting because there's like finding out again, just like that trust factor that we talked about earlier. It's like return to sport is different than physical therapy. Like physical therapy, they're great at what they do, but oftentimes their job is to get you to function again
Right.
without pain, not to like have the load on the muscles and the joints and make sure the mechanics are right and all these other stuff. Um, like have you, well, I guess what's your experience with that been? Because there's a been at least up here near DC, there's been a huge emphasis on like strength and conditioning coaches and like I know kids are doing like strength training when middle school age, and I don't even think I started doing that doing something other than like push-ups and squats and running bleachers until I was like
Exactly.
yeah.
No, that's what my husband and I were talking about, because I was like, why are kids lifting weights at this age? Should they be lifting weights at this age? And he's like, I don't know, because it's like a whole different animal than it used to be. But well, my daughter tore her ACL, no impact, just running down the field on turf, and it just popped.
Oh, I hate
So,
turf.
oh man, it was brutal for her. So she definitely had a long recovery, but I have two bright redhead kids, and they are a different breed with pain. So she popped up and she's like, Coach, put me back in, watch me. And she's cutting back and forth. And I'm like, okay, is this okay? Like, what's happening right now? And she came off the field. She's like, yeah, I heard a pop. We might need to go to the hospital. I was like, okay, let's go to the hospital. Oh yeah, it's definitely torn. So it was one of those where you look at it and but she was not going to let that stop her. She was like, okay, we're going back in. So on the physical therapy side, we have a physical therapist that works in a speed and agility clinic. So they're all connected. The hospital is actually has an office in this gym, which was perfect because the physical therapist could sit there and be like, she's not ready for these
Yeah.
things. And then he'd be like, all right, let's test this. And then we're going to go to this. And then we continued because physical therapy was still being covered for insurance. We then continued with the speed and agility training on our own so
Hmm.
that she still was getting both and the physical therapist was still around. So he was watching and still keeping tabs on everything during that process. We also were in a position where I was like, my husband's a health nut about things and recovery and all of those things. So we made sure she was doing all of the things on our end, like the Normatex and the stretching and, the red light therapy and stuff like that, just to make sure we knew we could do as much as we could do on our side.
Hmm.
She then recovered, came back, Trooper was in it, and she got fouled from behind and she was running towards her keeper and got fouled and her head went into her keeper's knee. So
Oh.
she, yeah, broke all right here. This was all broken. So,
Oh, I can feel that.
it was one of those where that was a moment where I was like, what just happened? Are we going to be okay? And that's when my husband thrives because
Uh-huh.
he's used to, those kinds of situations. And I can do those situations when it's not my kid, but when it's your kid, it's a little different. Um,
Yeah.
and he looked at me and he goes, hey, if I'm not panicking, you don't panic. Got it? And I was like, got it. Got it. Okay, I got it. I got it. So we got her to the hospital, and just by the grace of God, it was just the front part of her forehead and her nose
Uh-huh.
and her eye sockets, and not the internal part of her forehead by her brain. So
Wow.
they did surgery and they reconstructed her face. So they reconstructed her. She looks beautiful. You would never know that she even had any of this. And the doctor made sure to tell her that she's reinforced with metal so that she can head the ball. So thank you, doctor. She now is like, I got it. I'm good. And I'm like, that's great. so
Oh my God.
so we have had our, things on that, but you also have to look, a lot of these girls are built like complete beasts. Like they are, forced to be reckoned with, my daughter included. So when you see one fly across the field, you're like, oh my gosh, it's definitely, it rocks your world a bit.
Yeah.
My son just is like does like I don't know, where he like flips all over the place on the field. So he's a different animal that way, where he's like ninja kicking and you know, he's different. So it's different because we have, two great soccer players, but one's more of like a wall and doesn't
Hmm.
let anybody past it. And then you got my son who's like, let me backflip over top of you and I'm gonna get to that other person. That kind of.
Yeah. Rich shared that goal that he scored
Oh yeah.
the other day. I was like, oh wow. That was a class goal for sure. Um, but yeah, even like some of the injury stuff, like I know enough because I've been injured and how to fix myself. And
Mhm.
so sometimes I have players who I train who will say like, "Hey, what do you think about this? The doctor told me that." And I'm like, "I'm not a doctor, but I know that that's not right." And I'm like, "How does that happen?"
Yeah.
Um, so I
That
don't know.
happens a lot. That
Yeah.
happens more than you think. So,
I'm finding that out at a somewhat alarming rate, and I really don't like it. Like here's one. Like with Osgood Schlatters, it's
oh
like
yeah.
a growth in the knee, and
Yep.
I've had two players that come with patellar braces, and I'm like,
But
it's not.
that's
Yes,
not the patella.
I
Yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah. Oh yeah.
and I'm like, I don't even have a degree. My like in that my like I do have one, just not in
Yeah.
that. Um, I was like, I just know that because I have patellar problems in
Mhm.
both knees, and I know that that's not that. You treat it kind of similarly, but
Yeah.
like also no. So like I don't know. I just am like dumbfounded every time and I'm like this is really not good because
Yeah.
now I don't want to go to the doctor. And I probably well, you know what people you should still go get checked up and for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Just get a second opinion.
Second opinion. I'm all about the
Um
second opinion. All
but
about
yeah, it's been like I don't even know. I don't know. I don't know. And I was coaching for a little while, and I was like, ah, it's too much administrative stuff. Like I'll just
it.
train people on the side instead because that's like really what I excel at. It's like taking somebody, developing a player for like a lot of my players I've had for 2, 3 years now at this
Right.
point. So I like for me it's more rewarding. Like I get to know the families a little bit and try and build that kind of community. And it's like a little different. Like, you go to their games and stuff. And then the best part, the best thing that I've heard ever is a parent of the teammate of somebody that I train be like, wow, that kid got a lot better. What are you doing with them? And I'm like, send them over here.
Winning. You're
Yes,
winning.
winning. I'm
That's
I'm
it.
winning. I'm like, send them over here, please. I will help you with that if you want. So yeah, that's been pretty rewarding. Sometimes I wish like I didn't need to be doing this. Like if the because they play so much, but the like development cycle of a player is like I don't know. It could be better, I think, but I don't know. It's a very honestly I could talk for like 2 hours on the whole thing. So I will not. And speaking of trainings, I do have to run to some starting soon. But um yeah, I don't know. Any
That's so funny.
any real ass nickels this time?
No, I think I'm good. I
All
mean,
right.
unless you know of anything.
Sounds good. For those listening, links to the foundation and all the other stuff, if there's other stuff, will be in the description as always. Thank you for listening. Check the links out, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace. Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you want to watch another episode like this one, click there. If you want to subscribe, click there.